Pro wrestling journalist from ProWrestlingStories.com, Jim Phillips, returns to discuss the Iron Sheik and Killer Khan, and it happens right now.
The Everett Lee Show podcast, a shot of entertainment.
Jim Phillips, welcome back, brother. How you been?
Brothers and sisters, how we doing this afternoon? A big hello from the Rocky Mountain High, Denver, Colorado. How you doing today, Everett?
Not much, man. Not much. Just enjoying this blistering heat down here in Daytona Beach.
It's nice today, man. We had some rain pull through yesterday. It's a mid-70s, maybe 82 today. Breezy. Yeah, nice mountain summer.
Nice. That is amazing, man. I love it. I definitely love it. Yeah, I was talking briefly with you right before we going live and stuff, and all I gotta say is I am so glad that you're doing a lot better than what you have been, and what's been going on with you health wise. What's the story?
Oh, leaps and bounds better than where I was. Just a quick roundup as to what we're talking about. Back in January, I went in the hospital with lower back pain. They found an epidural abscess around my spinal cord, not the column, the cord itself. They went in and operated, cleaned that out, and it gave me paralysis. And I've been working and rehabbing back ever since then. So the legs are going good. I'm getting good movement in the legs, and I got good upper body strength. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, right now I'm in the manual chair, and right over there's as close as I'm going to get to the motorcycle for right now. But I tell you what, that little chair rips up and down the alley, man. It's got a turtle and a rabbit. And if you can get it up to rabbit number 4, you're going. You got to hold on. It'll stop on a dime.
Nice.
Yeah, it was pretty good, man. The insurance did me right on that one, so I can't complain. I'm looking to be back walking with at least a walker or some kind of device by the end of the year, hopefully, for sure. Right now, things are just going to happen when they happen. You know what I mean? I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and I said, man, it's almost like doing time. You know, you're just waiting for things to come on as they do, you know, and you're just sitting here kind of twiddling. And I keep busy with the writing and whatnot. Everything's going good, though.
That's amazing, man. That's amazing. I'm so glad everything's going good. You're getting back on your feet, and you're in good spirits, man. Because I was pulling for you there. I was like, man, we cannot lose Jim, man. I know you, Big John Murray. I want to give a shout out to Big John there up in Ohio. Big John, known for FGW, Future Great Wrestling, with the 5 Most Wanted, and Bodyguard, best friend to Poison's Brett Michaels. He was going through some stuff. He's doing good. You're doing good, and I'm so glad. It's like you're here tonight to discuss one of the most best villains in wrestling, the Iron Sheik.
Both of these guys that we're going to talk about had pivotal roles in the business, and not too far apart, to be honest. You know what I mean? But the Iron Sheik, he goes way back in the history of not only wrestling, but he's just got a great story.
He does. And it just amazes me with the career of the Iron Sheik, how it expanded and how he was known for a couple of matches, and even after wrestling, with him, being notorious on Twitter, I mean, you can't forget that there, And to me, Jim, the Iron Sheik is an epitome of what a pro wrestling heel should be, because he was the Iron Sheik 24/7, about the closest person that comes to being kayfabe in their character 24/7 in modern day wrestling is Maxwell Jacob Freeman, MJF. Yeah. And the Sheik lived it. He lived that. And, behind closed doors was a different story. But when everyone's seen the Sheik It was full Sheik mode, as I referred to it, 24/7, man. Especially with him and his comments about Hulk Hogan.
As he got older, he said some of the funniest shit, and then he's gonna live forever in the meme universe alone, just on funny shit that you see, little cartoons and little things talk about Hulk Hogan has raisin balls and everything else, little funny stuff, man. You know what I mean? But you think about the Sheik, everybody automatically always thinks about that run that he had in WWF with Nikolai as the tag and all that stuff that happened. But he was really pivotal in the growth of that company. And he was one of the guys, I can only think of a couple people that made a more drastic character change than the Iron Sheik from what he started as to what he finished. You know what I mean? Maybe Adrian Adonis. You know what I mean? That changed the shift that he made. But the early footage of Ali Vaziri was what the Iron Sheik, that's Iron Sheik's name, and Khosrow, it's a big long name, Khosrow Hussein Vaziri. Something
Yes.
Yeah. It's a long name. I don't remember the whole name. But he wrestled as Ali Vaziri early on in the early 70s into the late 70s. And it wasn't until he got to Vince on that second run that he really had the gimmick down pat. And when he got with Nikolai, it was just money, man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like you said, Ali. I can't pronounce names that great. Ali.
It's Ali Vaziri, but if you look it up, he's got like four names: Khosrow, Vaziri, Khosrow. I don't remember him. I should have wrote it down.
Khosrow or something like that.
Yeah, I think he goes by Khosrow to most of his buddies.
Yeah.
Right.
It's interesting that he moved in 1968. He moved to the United States. In 1971, he obtained 2 silver medals in the AAU Greco-Roman tournaments. One in 1969 and one in 1970, and he finally won some gold in 1971. And before I go any further with my notes here, I just want to mention that I got all my information and notes from ProWrestlingStories.com. I got everything from Evan Ginsberg. I want to give a shout out to him. Thank you so much for the information. I was well informed with my notes here. I just want to throw that out there. But you can head over to ProWrestlingStories.com and you could read more up on what we're going to be discussing tonight. But as soon as, like you're talking about, Ali Vaziri, he developed into the Iron Sheik. He developed that persona after there a while after, I guess Vern Gagne had a footing into him becoming the Iron Sheik because he saw the potential of what the Sheik was and what the Sheik could be. And he did have a hand in that, didn't he, Jim?
From the research that I've done, he came in with Ric Flair and those early guys in that class of the AWA that you always hear about that worked out in the freezing cold in the barn and all that shit. He came in through that way, but he was still young and he wasn't the Sheik yet. He was still working, had hair, thinner build, wasn't all bulked up and didn't have the curled boots or none of that yet. You know what I mean? He was still working thinner and almost as a middleweight or a lightweight. And some of the best footage that I could find of him in that time was from Championship Wrestling from Florida. And it was amazing, some of the stuff he was doing. I sent the copy of the link to you, and he was like, you would think he was watching a lightweight match the way he was moving around the ring.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you would have thought that, man, that he was the way he was moving around and stuff. And I thought that was some really good stuff there when you sent that to me, man, because I was like, wow. I was like, that's the Iron Sheik before the Iron Sheik, because I'd never seen anything post, pre-Iron Sheik. I'd never seen
it online. It's because I was looking today because I always do research and I get a lot of my stuff. My deep research that I go into is just watching the footage and listening to what they're saying, watching what's going on, putting the A to B to C. You know what I mean? Yeah, he's got the technical background. He was in the, like you said, the Olympics. He taught wrestling at the University of Minnesota for 3 semesters when he first came over, and then coached the Olympic squad, and he was the Iranian champion. And if I'm not mistaken, wasn't he like the bodyguard for the Sheik or the president of Iran back in the day, like the personal bodyguard? You know, so
he was.
He's a legit badass, you know, and he comes from that era of wrestlers that were legit badasses that didn't I'm not knocking the guys of today, but the guys of today are athletes that are trained in a combine type camp that allows them to be what the company wants them to be. Back in the day, a lot of your big stars were good old boys that worked jobs or had some kind of background in military or sports or whatever. You know what I mean? It wasn't, they come from the street and they had to break in on their own name, a lot of them, before they got to wrestling, and that just, you know what I mean, catapulted them even further, which is what happened with the Sheik. He was already popular in his own country as the champion of Iran, not to mention the other stuff. But yeah, he came over and got started with Vern up there and those guys. And then in that day, like everybody else, man, Vaziri hit the circuit, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, he did. He did. Right here, you can see right here, man. Look at the technical skill of the Sheik. There's Sheik with hair. You know, I mean, just him in this match here going up against Mark Stone there, man. The arm drag. I mean, look at the damn arm drag this guy did. Perfect execution.
The suplexes, and he does a bridge in that match that's just beautiful. But what really got me was whenever he was going for the leg takedown, the guy kicked him off. He bounced off the ropes. The guy was going to come up and donkey kick him or kick him in the stomach, and he cartwheels out of the way, goes back into a laying headlock or a headlock. It was just beautiful, man. It was like, it was so fluid. And you're watching it, and it's almost hard for your eyes to convince your brain that that's the Iron Sheik that you're seeing in the ring.
Yeah. Yeah, this is from you said Championship Florida Wrestling right here.
I'm not getting the link. I just got the circle on mine. But yes, that was the match that we talked about. Was Championship Wrestling from Florida, and it's beautiful, and it's on YouTube. And I would encourage people to go check out that whole match. It's not very long, but it's you're not gonna. I struggled to find footage of him pre-1984.
Yeah. Yeah, this right here, yeah, it's just, yeah, there he goes off the ropes. It's just, this is a great, damn, look at that drop kick, man. It's just
graceful, you know what I mean? And to see him working as a baby face, it just is, it's so un-Sheik.
It is so un-Sheik. It is so un-Sheik seeing
it was one of the greatest flip-flops of character ever. Back in the day, you could do shit like that, you know, because you're moving around. And if you watch where he travels and the different places he goes, you see the progression of the character just from, you know what I mean, whenever, I don't know who it was that convinced him to shave his head and grow the stash, but that was like, they gave that man $1 million and a lifetime full of money, you know what I mean, a lifetime full of career and just, yeah, it's those little things, you know what I mean?
It was. He like you said there, he wrestled pretty much like in Georgia Championship Wrestling, and he pretty much, that was in the, what was it, the late 70s there.
Yeah. He was in Florida in 73, and which was, if you're gonna learn, there's a few territories that you want to go work at if you're going to learn something. And he picked one of the best ones because he went down there and worked under Eddie Graham and those guys down there in Florida, you know? But he was in Maple Leaf too for a while back in the day in Canada. He worked through there. I saw some footage of him and Angelo Mosca in the steel cage. And that was really good. But yeah, I mean, you hit the circuit, you know what I mean? But yeah, he started out in the Southeast mainly.
Yeah. Building that reputation, building that name, you know, getting booked and just doing that. But when in 1979, he was in Madison Square Garden and pretty much A star was born because he was going by the name of the great Hussein Arab.
Yep.
And he won a 20-man battle royal and waded through some of the biggest names in the business at the time, like Ted DiBiase, Greg the Hammer, Valentine, Tino Santana, Ivan Putski, Haystacks Calhoun, Gorilla Monsoon, and all three Valiant brothers. And that night, he ended up getting a shot at the WWF champion at the time, Bob Backlund, and that in a 30-minute, classic. All-American, man.
All-American boy, stale as a piece of vanilla. Yeah. He's the thing about that, where you got to go back and look at everything you just said, the fact that every one of those guys was willing to go along with whoever was booking at that time, probably Vince Jr. and maybe Monsoon. They were willing to give the Sheik the push in a battle royal with all those other guys. Granted, those guys are going to get a payday, but all three Valiants and Haystacks Calhoun, it had to have been a group effort to get Haystacks over the top. He was huge. But it was like all those guys agreed to put him over, basically. You know what I mean? So,
yeah. It just
how to recognize a star.
Oh yeah. They saw the potential, man. They saw that they could do something with him. He had that package, and it basically he changed his name to the Iron Sheik, Classy Freddie Blassie. I forget what he was going to buy him, the name he went by when he joined
I don't know
Iron
if he was the fashion plate at that time or not, but that was used to be. It was Classy Freddie Blassie also used the fashion plate. I don't know about the Iron Sheik. I don't know if he was wrestling as the Iron Sheik by then for sure. But he took a long time. He took his run through the territories, and whenever he was in Mid-Atlantic, he was managed by Gene Anderson of the Anderson brothers, and Gene Anderson with the big stogie and the cane. He's rapping on the side. It's Gene. Like, I watched the match today, and I was like, is that Gene? But the Sheik was fluid in there. And if you watch those early matches and try and line them up in a timeline as best you can see that evolution as he grows toward what you eventually get in the Northeast in the mid-'80s,
Yeah.
Whenever he was in Maple Leaf, he held the Canadian heavyweight title too. I mentioned he was in Canada earlier. And everywhere he goes, guys like that, they recognize the ability and the fact that they're going to do business the right way. So back then, that's how you got a title, And he used to use that loaded boot. He would tap his toe on the loaded boot's a great gimmick because there's nothing to it. You know what I mean? Other than the guy selling for you, he'd tap his toe. Oh, there he goes. He's loading a boot. Yeah, and then he'd kick the shit out of somebody. You know what I mean? And it fall over and hurt. And so it was great. But before we move into the WWF, if you don't mind, I got a little quick run of his movements on his way getting there. Because like we talked about, it's kind of shadowy as far as matches, but you can follow the title lineage wherever he went. And he started in the AWA with Vern, as we talked about. And then we went to Florida in 1973. Now, from 73 to 79, he was wrestling Florida, Georgia area, right? So
right.
Then 79, he goes back up to Vince, like you just mentioned. And then he's evolving this whole time, right? And he takes on the Iron Sheik, and then he goes back to Jim Crockett Promotions. And then he goes out to Bill Watts in 1981 for Mid-South, back to Florida in 82. So he's bouncing around, getting paid, but at the same time, he's putting distance, you know what I mean? So you can go to different places and make that money and do those quick shots, stay for a year and get paid and get out again, And then in 83, he goes back to the WWF and meets up with Nikolai, and that's where you're at right now, what we're talking about.
He goes in 83. He goes and goes back up there, and he has a match against Bob Backlund, and he on December 26, 1983, he defeats Bob Backlund, and wins the WWF Heavyweight Championship after the towel was thrown in after he put him in the camel clutch. And, you know, to me, to this day, the camel clutch, out of like all the submission holds, to me, that one right there, I just because of just the positioning of that right there, you know. And
as a wrestling kid, I think I put just about every wrestling hold you can imagine on my younger brother, who was 8 years younger than me at the time. And I stretched him in the camel clutch till he cried for mama, literally. And yeah, it's a legit thing if you put it on right. So yeah, we were those kids bouncing off the mattresses and into the floor and all that other shit. So yeah, but like this is where I was saying earlier, both of these guys had a pivotal point where they helped change wrestling history, because what you're talking about is at the same time that this is happening in New York with the Sheik, in Minnesota, Hogan is getting cold feet on working with Vern and is ready to get the hell out of there and has made the move and started working in New York a little bit and has started getting over in New York a little bit. And Vince sees big money in Hogan, and the belt's on the All-American Boy. You can't give it to the Great American Hero if it's on the All-American Boy. You can't; those guys can't fight each other.
Right.
So the Sheik comes in as the heel that can take it from Backlund and pass it to Hogan and do it the right way, just like they did with Koloff back in the day, giving it to San Martino.
Right. More like the Sheik was a transitional champion.
Exactly.
There, because when you want to take the belt off of someone, but you don't want to have that person go with them, you need to have that middleman, which is a transitional champion, which they do quite a bit, even to this day.
You still got good guys, bad guys to this day, even in shades of gray that wrestling has become. And if you can't fight certain guys together, it doesn't work. So you drop it to one guy, give it to another. Most often it's usually back in the day. I think the Sheik only had it for like 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks before he dropped it to Hogan. And that was in early 80s where I got it written down.
Me too. January 23rd, 1984. So he beats Backlund on December 26, 83, right before the 83 ends. He defeats him. And then about 3-4 weeks later, back in Madison Square Garden, he has a match with Hulk Hogan. And on January 23rd, 1984, Hulk Hogan defeats the Iron Sheik to capture his first WWF World Heavyweight Championship. And he's known for losing the title there, but also he's known for another feud, because he had a feud with Hogan, you know, where Hogan defeats him and takes the title. But after that, Jim, he gets in a feud with Sergeant Slaughter. But this is interesting to me because at this time, Slaughter, he's a heel. He's a heel, man. You know?
I think that let me touch on something real quick about the Hogan title change as well.
Okay.
There was a rumor, because Hogan had left Vern for Vince, and this is well known in the wrestling community, but people that don't know this, there was a rumor that Vern offered the Iron Sheik $100,000 to break Hogan's leg in this match, and the Sheik wouldn't go against Vince and wouldn't do dirty business, and he told Vern no. Now, it's in my mind, if you hear enough of the boys from that era telling that story, hearsay can only go so far before it's reality. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I would say that's probably true, because Vern's pretty ruthless, and Hogan was a pretty big golden goose to see flapping out the window, you know, flying off to New York. So I could see that sideline the moneymaker, you know what I mean? But he didn't go on into business for himself. He let Hogan win the title, and they did what they were supposed to do. But my thoughts on what you just said as far as the Sergeant Slaughter stuff, I think right about this same time, if I'm not mistaken, because I didn't look this up, but Sergeant Slaughter went into an affiliation with the G.I. Joe bunch and did stuff with G.I. Joe and was G.I. Joe's the All-American Hero or the Great American Hero G.I. Joe, that whole gimmick. You know what I mean? So it's going to be hard to push yourself as a heel and sell good guy toys and be a good guy in the cartoons. So I think here again, the Sheik was used to facilitate more of a flip for Slaughter, because by the end of this boot camp match, because I watched that, and I mean, you think of boot camp matches, you automatically think of Slaughter and Patterson, and this was evidently Slaughter's match. You know what I mean? Like, this was his match because he fought it with a couple people. But you kind of see the shift in that match, and facilitated through the fact that he's fighting the Iron Sheik and he's going to USA all the way, all that stuff. You know what I mean? So I really think it had a lot to do with his affiliation with Mattel and the G.I. Joe image that he's trying to portray.
Yeah.
Beyond wrestling, man. That's that money.
Yeah, it is. Like, you pull up a good point, because the Sheik was used right there for Sergeant to flip. Yeah, because he needed someone to start selling those, action figures.
The good guy Slaughter. Very, very rarely do you see that happen twice in a row with a heel. But yeah, the good guy Slaughter came out of the boot camp match. You know what I mean? And not very long after that is when he started doing the G.I. Joe stuff. So sometimes people are saying that you're just making inferences and trying to put A and B together. But if you look at things logically in the flow of how things happen, back to what I said earlier, if it's that obvious, it must be,
Yeah. I mean, It was obvious and stuff, and even Sergeant Slaughter said this. He even said that if you really look at it, and he pulls up a good point, he is actually the only real live action G.I. Joe figure that's live action.
I can't even imagine like going through all that. You know what I mean? Hats off to Bob Remus. Man, the Iron Jaw that made $1 million. And all he really had to do was throw on the gimmick and say a few lines. The cartoon people did the rest. The toy people did the rest. But just to be affiliated with something like that, for somebody in wrestling, you seldom saw a crossover like that. It was kind of like a Rock type thing before Rock and Hogan. Hogan crossed over too with Rocky III and all that. But I mean, if you really sit down and wrap your brain around it, you're not going to find too many people earlier on that got over like that in a big market in a big way, like Slaughter did,
Yeah. It's just he got over it. He helped Mattel sell a bunch of action figures, man. And even in the wrestling world, that basically they got Slaughter over, man. It was like when you throw USA up against Iran there, and even at that time, because I think there was a hostage situation going on, the hostage crisis in Iran, so they needed someone to cheer for. America needed someone to cheer for. There you go, Sergeant Slaughter. There he is. He's all American.
I can see the footage now. The video footage came through finally. Yeah, this was a great match. There he goes, loading the boot right there. He's tapping the ground, loading the boot.
Yep.
There's great stuff. You know what I mean? And those guys aren't the stuff they're doing right there right now. They're not like today. The kids flip flop and fly. These guys are taking bumps and beating each other up, but they're selling. It's all the sell. You know what I mean? They're not doing anything really right there. It's just great stuff because they knew what they were doing and they knew how to sell it. I miss those days so much. I got to see the Iron Sheik wrestle live a couple of times in Missouri whenever he was with Nikolai, but I never got to see him in his early days whenever he was running the circuits. But the WWF pretty regularly came through St. Louis and Cape Girardeau, Missouri both, and we would hit the venues because they were really close.
Yeah.
House shows, as you will. But yeah, they came out and, man, they knew how to rile the crowd. People hated them. Oh yeah. The Sheik was the guy that basically just like he would bring heat to the crowd. What I liked about that boot camp match when he throws Slaughter out, like
let me pull this up again. Like when he throws Slaughter out, man, it's like he works the crowd. That's what I love about that. He works the crowd here.
It's the art of pro wrestling from back in the day. You bring them to a froth and boil. You know what I mean? It was, yeah. Those guys were so smart back then. So smart.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to find that spot here real
I stole
quick.
the spit from him too. Whenever I was whenever I was a teenager, I would do the hot puh. Whenever I was talking shit about somebody or cutting a promo on somebody.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. I'd break your opponent's back on Hulk Hogan. You know,
USA no good. I ran #1. USA. Yeah, fucking great shit, man. And then Nikolai singing the Russian anthem that's just some fucking Russian song that he learned how to sing. It was just so, the way they ran wide open back then was another thing that romanticizes that time. You know, it's just like run with it and see if it works, you know?
Yeah, definitely run with it to see if it does work there.
Oh, man, the Sheik was so great. They were so great.
Oh yeah, they were just so great. I loved it, man. I remember him as a kid, Jim. It's just my dad couldn't stand him. He just couldn't wait for someone to get in the ring and just whip his ass. He could not wait. My dad jump up, start yelling at the TV like Ric Flair, you know. And me and my brother start laughing and aggravate my dad about the Sheik. It's like, oh, Sheik's gonna kick whoever's butt comes in there, and my dad's like, he ain't gonna do nothing. Someone's gonna whip his ass, you know. My dad he'd get into it, man. He's like, I can't stand that man. And I was like, oh,
about it.
He did his job, man. He did his job, you know, to get people.
You see people get involved in matches today, but not like it was when we were younger. Because I'm 50, so I was like, I remember I'm a little bit older than you. I remember the old stuff, and like you're talking about, the family members in the living room raging at the television, wailing. My dad used to get so mad when people would interfere. I don't know why those people got to come down and get in the mat. You know what I mean? It's like, because they're doing it to piss you off. You know what I mean? So, yeah, it was great, but the storytelling was better back then, and it was just, it was more wide open and a lot less looked over, a lot less edited, a lot less people looking over things and checking things, and you know what I mean? They danced. They called it in the ring, and that's how it should be.
Yeah, they danced. They told the story in the ring, and the Sheik did it. The Sheik did it great. After he lost the title, Jim, to Hulk Hogan, it was like, okay, what do we do with the Sheik now? It's like, all right, let's put him together with another guy that everyone hates, you know, Nikolai Volkov. So. Yeah. They formed a tag team, and later, you know, many fans recalled the hatred tag team that was formed with Nikolai Volkov and how a younger generation got introduced to the obnoxious Iranian who had a penchant for spitting at and insulting the USA, like we were talking about.
Well,
and
if there's one thing that you can hand to Vince and the McMahons, they know how to market to the heel as to what's going on in pop culture better than just about anybody else, man. They've been doing it for a long time, and they know how to do it better, like I say, better than anybody. And they did that with the Sheik. Now, before we get ahead of ourselves, I do want to touch back on one thing that happened back in the early 80s with his first run with the WWF. In 87, this is kind of a dark side of the ring thing, but in 87, he was on the road with Hacksaw Jim Duggan, and they were traveling on the road. Now, number one, Hacksaw Jim Duggan is a big baby face, and the Sheik is one of the biggest heels. So in the old school traditions of things, as Stone Cold would say, that's a no-no. You know what I mean? Right off the gate, that's a no-no. Both these guys had a penchant to party, is all I'm going to say. And just like a lot of guys in the 80s, it wasn't exclusive to these two guys. But they happened to have vehicle trouble, or they got pulled over for whatever reason, I don't know. But they were caught with some substances from South America, and it was a bad day. So they both lost their jobs, but eventually both come back. This happened in 1983. 80, did it 87?
Yeah.
87? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It
From
was
what?
87.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
had it on the wrong line.
That's all right. That's all right. I got it right here because I was reading what Evan Ginsberg put out there in 1987. Several years removed from the winning prestige WWF World Title, the Iron Sheik's career hit a significant speed bump after being caught in New Jersey with weed and coke while driving in the same car as his then rival Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
Yeah, that is. There's no good way out of that. They had to, in order to save face for the company and to save face in front of all the other boys. You know what I mean? Because if you don't fire those guys in that situation, then every other guy on your roster is going to think, well, we're wide open to do whatever the fuck we want to do, and they're not going to do anything about it. You know what I mean? So, yeah, they made an example of him. But the Sheik was notorious as a party animal. There's another funny story I'm sure a lot of people have heard about with the urine test story. Whenever the Sheik took the urine test and the urine test come back positive, and they went and told the Sheik, your urine test come back positive, and Sheik was like, yes, that's right, my test is positive, of course it's positive, I'm the Sheik. And he started cutting this promo on how great he was because the test was positive. They're like, no, Sheik, positive is bad, positive is not good. He went right into full promo because he thought positive on the drug test was a good thing. I would have loved that. Listen, especially whenever I was in my 20s, I partied like those guys partied. And I would have loved to, you know how they give you that question, if you get one wish, you could go and do anywhere you want, do anything you want. I would love to be like a ref or somebody that got to ride around with those guys in the vehicle and party back in those days the way they partied back in those days, because I would have fit right in with those fuckers. Because I'm just sorry. Because I'm just as crazy as they are. And whenever I was in my 20s, I went through just as much wild shit. So it would have been So, but it's not the way. It's not the way it happens.
I was gonna say this, Jim. You imagine being the cop pulling over a car and you got the Iron Sheik and Hacksaw Jim Duggan in it, and it's like, how do you explain that?
It had to have been a statey. It had to have been a state cop or something like that, because if a lower level cop pulls those guys over, even with those substances, their level of fame would have gotten them over.
Oh,
you know what I mean? They would have brushed it off. Hey, don't do it again. That type of shit. But when you get a little bit higher in law enforcement, they're forced to make those kind of dickhead moves and put people in jail for shit that they shouldn't be getting in trouble for. Personal choice is personal choice. And I believe that to this day. I'm not going to get off on that soapbox, but that's why I live in Denver. That's enough said. You know, personal choice is your own. And every day we lose our freedoms a little bit more in this country while people are looking at their phones not paying attention. So, back in those days, man, it had to have been a statey or somebody in upper law enforcement was like, man, you fuckers, I don't care who you are, you're going to jail. And, man, as someone, again, that has done that life and as someone that has went to jail, I can only imagine the ride from the incident to the jailhouse is always a somber occasion. I can only imagine what it would be like with the Sheik.
Oh, yeah.
Why are you taking me to jail? You blah, bleep, 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 you bleep, bleep. The guy with the bleep button would have to be Flash. With all the bombs that would be dropped in the back of that cop car. I can't imagine he was getting shackled up and you know what I mean? Because you know they got their hands put behind their back if they went the route of getting arrested, you know, and all that shit happened. I wouldn't have wanted to have braced up the Sheik, is what I'm saying. Like Duggan, I can see being commensurate and being like, okay, but the Sheik, man, I just don't see it happening. I see the Sheik being like, no, jabroni, get away from me.
Yeah.
The Sheik. I'm the
And then
Sheik.
him denying that was Hacksaw Jim Duggan. And it was like, he's like, you jumped in the car with me and I tried to drive to get away. And he he hammered me in the back of the head. You know,
I can see there's no way they traveled together to jail in the same car. There's no way. There was two cars on site. I promise you.
You ever watch Kevin Nash's Click This podcast? You ever watch it?
I don't watch his stuff. I watch Briscoe, Bradshaw, and Cornette. Those are the guys that I usually dedicate my time to.
Nash tells some pretty good, interesting stories. I like listening when he talks about him and Scott Hall, and then he talks about, going up the road and stuff and everything. So he's when the Sheik passed away, he shared a story about the Sheik. He knew Sheik really well, and the Sheik knew him, so they were acquainted. There's even a clip. Kevin Nash has had a signing at a convention. The Sheik comes walking in, just being the Sheik and stuff, and saying, like, look at his arm. His arm's bigger than that jabroni Hulk Hogan, and it's just it was so great, and he's just going through the whole spiel of being the Iron Sheik, and Nash sitting there just smiling, just shaking his head, I mean, Nash gets it, kayfabing it, yeah. But
the
then
later clips in his life before he passed away from conventions are the stuff of gold and the stuff of legend on their own. I don't remember who it was that he cursed out at that desk. It may have been the Ultimate Warrior, somebody of that caliber.
Yeah.
But he just cursed him out, and his little fat handler, the guy looks like Curly from the I look like Curly, but this guy really looks like Curly from the Three Stooges. He's trying to wrangle the Sheik and pull the Sheik away. Come on, let's go. Come on, let's go. The whole time the Sheik is like, fuck you, jabroni. I'll kick your ass. I'm the Sheik. I'm the Sheik. Oh, my God, man. That guy, bravado, piss and vinegar to the bitter end. I would have loved to have known that guy.
I would have too. But Nash shared a story. He said back, of course, like you said, back in the day, those wrestlers. I think Jake Roberts said it best, because back in those days, when you're traveling from town to town and you're staying in a hotel, you got time on your hands. Of course, drugs and alcohol, is gonna, fill in the time and stuff. And Jake says nowadays, he's like a lot of people, they got too much things going on, because I mean, how often now do you hear about something with, drugs and alcohol? Rarely nowadays. But the thing like Nash shared was, there was a story back when Sheik was doing, at a party, he did a handstand and did a line of Coke doing a handstand. And I was like, what? And he asked the Sheik, I think he asked the Sheik, he's like, what's the longest line you did? And the Sheik was like, 11. And he's like, 11? Like, wow.
Man, those are rails. Those are for the non-party community, though. When you get beyond that, it's called a rail. Sheik was rails. Yeah.
Rails on he did a handstand and did rails.
I can't even imagine how purple his head must have been from being upside down doing cocaine. I can't even imagine. It was.
Jeez. I mean, wow.
I would have loved a fly on the wall. That's what I'm saying. A fly on the wall. I would have loved to have been in some of those rooms, because I can only imagine.
I can imagine. Me too, man. Wow. Hey, you imagine social media existed back then? Oh God, that'd be the number one video on TikTok. The Iron Sheik doing a freaking rail.
It wouldn't have been the great thing that it was if the stuff that we have now would have been back there to pollute it and corrupt it. It wouldn't have been the wonderful fantasy land that it was back in those days. Yeah, a lot of bad stuff happened, but at the same time, there was a lot of good stuff that happened. And those guys, even though they did a lot of drugs and they did a lot of partying and they did a lot of shady stuff that we're seeing on these television shows, that a lot of these television shows are glamorizing the really bad things that happened. At the same time that some of this bad stuff was happening, there was really good brotherhood and really good things being done. And I don't want to make it look bad, but man, the party rock and roll lifestyle that it was back then in those days with the music industry, with the wrestling business, with the sports industry. You can see pictures of guys in the 70s in the NFL, Pittsburgh Steelers sitting on the side of the fucking sideline, smoking a cigarette with a bottle by their leg, and you know damn good and well it ain't no energy drink.
No, 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 nah. It was a cold one, man. It was definitely a cold one.
So much. Our guard, the country hadn't been scarred enough to get to where we're at this point back then.
Yeah.
The country's gone through so many scars since then. We've walled ourselves up a lot more, and we're a lot more security minded, and there's a lot more what are you doing, where you at, where you been type of shit going on now. Social media, all that stuff. Back then it just wasn't that way, and it was a lot more fun. I don't know, like I say, I'm 50, so I'm old enough to remember the 70s. So it was even as a child, I remember that it was a magical time.
It was a magical time. I'm 44, so I remember the golden era of wrestling in the 80s. I grew up when I was a kid. I remember that because I mean I remember Iron Sheik really well with his rivalries and stuff, and even with Nikolai Volkov. And one thing I want to add, you talk about Nikolai Volkov, was that along with Nikolai, when they would go to Madison Square Garden, they would get so much heat, Jim, that in the middle they'd sneak out of a packed Madison Square Garden in the middle of the card, hiding in an ambulance and having the ambulance drive them away from a hostile mob, waiting for them outside of Madison Square Garden to get, it's like, yeah, we're gonna wait for you when you come out. We're gonna kick your.
Yeah, and you can't not be those guys. It's not like they're gonna go out in a cartoon mask. Those guys are they can't not look the way they look. You know what I'm saying? Like they can try and cover up and shit, but they're huge fucking guys. They're huge guys. You know what I mean? And then, yeah, I've had Evan was good friends. I'm very good friends with Evan, and he's told me many stories and accounts of his friendship with Nikolai, and Nikolai being such a sweet person, and Nikita Brezhnikov as well. These guys, yeah, they were close to the old school people. I would have loved to have been closer to the Iron Sheik and seen what, seen his life a little bit better, you know what I mean, as he got older, and to hear stories, and even with his flamboyance, and not in a homosexual way by no means, but with the way he talked and with the way he would tell a story, I can only imagine what it would be like. And what you were saying a minute ago, as far as them guys being rushed out or being carted out in the ambulance, that's almost a measure as to how good of a heel you were in those days, because you hear the stories from the Freebirds too about how they had to park at the police station in Georgia and hide in the fucking back of the police car and be brought into the arena in the cop car and taken out in the cop car. Those mobs were waiting on them there. In the old territories, if you really drew heat, then that was something that you just dealt with. You had to deal with. You know what I mean? Like you didn't park your car close to where you got out some other way, rode with another one of the boys or something. Yeah.
It was. Yeah. I mean, like they would have to sneak out and hide and stuff. For example, Jerry Lawler talking about he went out to his car after a wrestling show over in Memphis, and the guy was waiting for him, and he had a rock, and he's like, "Don't you think about it?" And the guy threw the rock to the windshield, and he went to run him over, and all of a sudden he was going, and it was like, all four of his tires were flat. Oh, yeah. That's how it was in the territory days. That was real heat. And
Bob told me a story. This is kind of jumping, but this is the similar thing, and this is a good story. Bob Roop had ran a promo with Steve Kern in Championship Wrestling from Florida. Steve Kern's dad had been a POW, and they kind of worked that into Steve Kern's angle down there in Florida. And Bob Roop started talking about how no real American would ever get captured, and ran this heel line. And really, I mean, if you live in Florida.
Yes.
If anybody knows anything about Florida, there's plenty of guard armories and military type stuff down there, right? There's a huge military community. Bob Roop was pissed off the huge military community back in those days. and he tells a story about how he used to carry a 357 Magnum on the seat of his car whenever he went to the arenas, just in case somebody jumped him. And he said one time was going back from the building to his car and hadn't took his gun, and some guy drew down on him in that one moment that he didn't have his gun. And he was like, in the back of his mind, he thought, this guy's either going to kill me or chicken out, but if I run, he's for sure going to shoot me. You know what I mean? So like the guy backed down and didn't shoot him, but he said he was eye to eye with, you know what I mean, the guy looking right at him, and this is in Florida, you know. So then this was the 70s when things were a little bit more believable, and he incorporated the guy's dad, and he was a POW, and it's so all those things. That's how you build that white heat. You add the levels to it. You know what I mean? You don't just go out there and tell somebody that you hate them and their mom's a hoe and all this other stuff to try and get the crowd mad at you for being mad at them. You build the heat by doing different things that makes you more and more and more and more and more hated. You know what I mean? And Bob Roop was probably one of the most hated. I think they told that. I think Roop told this story on the Territory Talk TV show that ran about 7 months ago. Yeah,
Tales from the Territory.
That's the one.
That's the one.
I believe he told that story on there too. But when I interviewed him 3.5 years ago, see, that's what's cool about what I do. I write about the territories. I'm the historian for the pro wrestling stories. So all this Dark Side of the Ring, Tales from the Territories, The Rock's TV show, all this shit is bringing attention to what I do. So it's bringing, it's giving me all kinds of opportunities to talk about stuff that I love, you know, which is great.
That's why I like reading ProWrestlingStories.com, man. I read a lot of stuff on there.
And, brother.
Yeah.
We have a talented crew. We have a talented crew at this website. It's not just one or two writers. It's a phalanx of talented people coming at you with all kinds of good research and stories and things that you don't know about the wrestling business. So you should definitely go and check us out.
Yes, everyone should. That's viewing right now. That you should definitely check it out. I want to
talk a little bit about Killer Khan.
Well, I want to wrap it up real quick. A couple more things on the Sheik, and then I do want to discuss Killer Khan. Pretty much, in the Sheik worked wrestling circuits from 92 to 2000, and then pretty much, and he was social media.
Around through the indies a lot in that time period, in the NWA at that time, and WCW, and all the people that was really doing anything. At the end of the day, like I said, he created something that's going to have a marketability for the rest of his life, and he did for his entire life have marketability off of that. But once he reached a certain age in his elderly career, he did the Legends contract with the WWE and was doing sporadic work with those guys up until the end. And he went into the Hall of Fame in 2005.
Yeah, 2005. I watched his induction speech. I was laughing, man. I mean, the crowd was just going all, you know, everything that we mentioned tonight. He threw that in there in a sum up thing
and more. And more.
And he was the stage, and he kept on, and people just loved him. They loved him, and he said, he basically said it right there in 2005 when he got inducted to the Hall of Fame. This was his height. This was his biggest moment in his career, being in the Hall of Fame, and everyone loved him for it, you know. And he showed that gratitude. But being the Sheik, it was
great. If you go back, if you have access to Peacock and the Hall of Fame stuff, if you're able to go back even on YouTube and look that up.
Yes.
At one point, he would, every time somebody, Mean Gene, it was a couple people, but Mean Gene was like the MC. They tried to get the mic back from the Sheik, and he kept going back. And I would like to think, and I would especially like to think, and after a while, I thought it was a rib. I thought it was like he was ribbing everybody, just not sitting down on purpose. He's one of the reasons that they have capped the time limits on speeches now, and they will cut people cold. Like I've seen a couple of Hall of Fames and cut it cold and go right to like the intro music to the next one, and the motherfucker stand there with a dead mic. The Sheik, and I would like to think, but there was a really funny scene if you go back and watch that at the end of that. Mean Gene does rib him, And he goes, "Hey, Sheik, I think there's a phone call for you. I think somebody wants to talk to you on the phone."
Yeah, it was so funny. It was so funny. Yeah, he just it was just so funny with his Hall of Fame speech, man. I was dying laughing. I went back just to watch it, and I was just dying over this. I said, "This is just too great, man. You can't write this stuff, Jim. You cannot write this."
Before we leave off of, I agree 1,000%. These guys were the unique. They were the unique article, and that's another reason everything was great back then. Because nowadays, like I said earlier, people are farmed into a role that's already pre-made that they want, and they mold somebody to fit that role that they want. Back in those days, you had to have charisma and had to have some kind of character and bring something to the table for people to want to watch you. Now, one of the things we didn't talk about the Sheik that I want to touch on before we move on, and this is something that helped legitimize him not only with the boys, but with the audience. And I don't know if you can find footage of this or not, but the Persian clubs, right? Sheik had he had like several different sets, but the tall wooden Persian clubs, and he would lift them up, and he would I got a screw and a pencil. This is the stoner Persian clubs. He would lift them up over his shoulders like that, and just that alone, the tendon strength and the muscle control to be able to hold 275-pound clubs they're not straight, they're angled up to a big bowl point, and they got it looks like a cricket mallet on steroids. And then he starts working them like this, right? This is the exact motion that he does, right? And he works them, but it's so fluid. And you got to think about like I say, the tendon strength and the muscle control to be able to do that. And he would challenge everywhere he went in his early days of the WWF. Vince used to have a kayfabe goof talk show called Tuesday Night Titans, also on Peacock. And if you want to get a really good laugh out of some early WWF stuff, I encourage you to go watch the Tuesday Night Titans clips and show. It's like hour-long clips, or hour-long show, rather. And he does the Persian clubs on there. They do all kinds of wild shit on there. But the Persian clubs was a legit deal. If you talk and listen to some of the wrestler interviews, they're like, I don't know how I was able to do that. Once somebody did it, and it slips my mind, the person that actually did it, and half-ass worked them right, and the Sheik gave them the clubs. You know what I mean? It was like, here, you get the clubs, you know? But that'd be something that should be on that TV show that they do where they hunt down the artifacts, because there can't be too many pairs of those real clubs floating around.
I think they did an episode like that there.
Did they do that?
I want to throw this out here. Simon Borlance said, and I've been watching along for years now. Jim knows his shit. Want to say that right there? And yeah, he said, yeah.
That's
Bob,
my brother down in Australia. That's one of my Aussie brothers. I got good brothers all over the country, but I got to say, Simon has been watching my stuff and rooting and cheering me on ever since way back whenever I was just doing little blogs and shit before any of this happened. So yeah, I appreciate Simon, and I love my Aussie brothers.
Yeah, thank you for tuning in, Simon. Thank you so much. I have I want to play a little bit of the Hall of Fame thing here. Tell me if it pops up right there. You see it?
Oh yeah, I see it.
All right, here we go.
Dan Gable, and everybody know about Dan Gable. Dan Gable was like Kurt Angle, the real 190 pounds. That time, 1972, to Dan Gable and Kurt Angle. They know new generation Kurt Angle, but the old generation Khosrow Vaziri, Iron Sheik, and Dan Gable.
Yeah, damn right, Kurt. I love Angle too. He's had a lot of rough times, but I love Angle too. He's great.
Oh yeah.
If you don't know about 100,
everyone should watch this just for the humor factor alone. Even if you don't know the Iron Sheik from Johnny walking down the street, if you watch this, you will laugh. That shit is hilarious.
Yeah, I think it's right here.
Love with the wrestling from put on the ring,
Hulk
take out the ring, 24 hours in the Midwest. I drive from Minneapolis to Milwaukee, Chicago. I made it to the Hall of Fame. Yeah.
There he is.
He's popping me now. Hell yeah. Look, Bob Orton laughing. He knows.
Sheik, man.
Oh, he ain't done. He's going to keep going.
6 years.
Yeah.
Nobody beat Mr. Bob Backlund, the most famous arena in the world. Madison Square Garden. I put him in the camel clutch. Give me hell yeah.
Yeah.
That's it.
Oh, God. I bet he was high as balls.
Oh, my
Oh, man,
God.
I bet he was ripped. I've been working on my Jim Neidhart for a long time, but I think I could be convinced to do that look for Halloween. I'd have to grow out the mustache, and I can get the promo down. Madison Square Garden, 1983, Bob Backlund.
Yes.
God.
I put him in the camel clutch.
Put him in the camel clutch. He cried like little baby with his resin balls. Yeah. I could be convinced.
I love it.
I've had the goatee for a long time, but Vaziri would be almost worth it. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. The Sheik, man. He was great. You know, I mean, from his jabroni, you know, tweets to like you would call everyone a jabroni on Twitter and stuff. It was great. When I felt bad, I was having a bad day, I'd go on Twitter and read what the Iron Sheik was tweeting, and it would cheer me up. I'd just start laughing. It would help.
I never got onto the Twitter. I stopped at Facebook because I figure as much punishment as I get into for my thoughts and what I say on Facebook and the non-wrestling, like I get in trouble all the time on there for posting shit. So yeah, I let that go. I don't do Twitter.
Go on Pro Wrestling Stories. I forgot who put the article out. They got the a top 10 Iron Sheik top 10 tweets.
Nice.
Yeah, you can check it out.
I love my brothers and sisters because we all, every one of us is succeeding in a different direction and on a different level with that website. So whenever you tell me things like this, it's always cool. It's always cool to hear that. You know what I mean?
Yes, you'll enjoy it, man. They got a top 10 list there, but you know, unfortunately, the Iron Sheik passed away this last month on June 7th, 2023. But he will always be remembered to many, you know, as you know, even to me personally, as one of the greatest, you know, heels in professional wrestling, and with his, you know, winning the WWF Championship, losing it, and then having the boot camp match. I'll always remember Sheik, man. Always.
He's one of those guys that has reached a level of immortality, not only in his business, but in pop culture, to the point that, like, guys, those are some of the guys that, immediately it's Hogan, but the names that follow the Sheik is always Savage. These guys are always recognizable because they transcended. Yeah, boy, you need a Slim Jim.
Yep. You're right about that.
Sounds like some hooping and hollering going on somewhere outside. Somebody's having a good time in the neighborhood.
Hey, at least people's having fun. That's
you
always
that's heard me talking like the Sheik real loud. Now they're like, "What the hell is going on over there?"
This is great.
It's all good. It's all good. I love my neighbors. I'm friends with all these guys. Whenever I first got back home, it was so nice to see, like, within probably the first 4 hours after the garage door went up, and my motorcycle had been here the whole time. I was in the hospital for 3 months. The motorcycle had been here the whole time, so they knew that I wasn't going. Whenever I got back and I was in the wheelchair and rolled out the first time into the driveway, it was like the little family all, "Hey, how you doing? How you been? What happened?" All that stuff. It's so great. But yeah, I just wanted to throw that in there when we were talking about the neighborhood.
That's
shit
all
can
good.
Get wild though. This is Colorado. Shit can get wild. It's been a 4th of July weekend. Some wild shit happened. People lighting fireworks in the middle of the street. It's crazy.
Yeah. I hope you had a good 4th. I had a pretty good 4th. It was good. It was definitely good. And this you know, we talked about this before you know, we doing this podcast tonight and going live. talking about, it's like, what a great person to talk about after the 4th of July. Everyone would probably be talking about, a real American or something. Here we are talking about the Iron Sheik, who was anti-American.
It's a great heel move. That's why I love it. It's a heel move.
Yeah, go against the grain for once, man. It's always good to go against the grain, I mean,
that was my daily life. Still is my daily life. Black sheep of the family all the way for sure.
Hell yeah. Killer Khan. You mentioned Killer Khan. I wanted to add this here because you just put the article up on not too long ago on ProWrestlingStories.com, and when you mentioned him, I said to myself, Jim, I said, I've heard the name of Killer Khan. Where have I heard that? And then I dove into the article that you put out there, and I started reading it. And I said, as a kid, I vaguely remember Killer Khan. He's one of those guys that got to the shuffle. Killer Khan was one of those guys that got lost in the shuffle because a lot of people don't remember him. But if you go back and you look again, if you look back in the early 80s, he had a pretty damn good feud with Andre the Giant. And
feud of the year, 1981. It was they got in a Wrestling Observer, maybe one of those magazines from back in the day. I can't remember which one it was, but it was feud of the year, 1981. But this is another one of those guys that was only in the American wrestling business for a short window of time and really hit it big and got put over by the right people in the right places. And that's a huge thing. Anybody can come to the wrestling community if you're accepted to try and make a career or try and make a name for yourself. Very few guys get to change the business, and even fewer guys get to be pushed to change the business. And that was pretty much what they did with Killer Khan. Now, whenever I say change the business, what he and Andre did in 1981, whenever I was researching the article, I can't remember the exact figure, hundreds of thousands of dollars and just as many thousands of fans they drew up and down the East Coast between Florida and New York during that period of time. Now, before we talk about all that, we need to talk a little bit about the man himself. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah. He was known. He was born Masashi Ozawa. Am I saying that correctly?
You got it, brother.
Excellent.
I think you got it. We could both be wrong, and he may be pissed. But as far as I know, you got it right.
Masashi Ozawa. He was born in the western coastal plains of Japan. I got this information right here from ProWrestlingStories.com. Mr. Jim Phillips, who I'm talking with right now. This is all from you here. Born on the western coastal plains of Japan in Nagata province in a small city called Sabane in the spring of 1947, when he first hit on the wrestling radar in 1971 at New Japan Pro Wrestling. Awesome company. Wrestling under his birth name. At the time, America was coming off the Vietnam War, was also in the middle of the automobile and gas crisis. I remember my parents talking about this in the 70s.
That was a big deal back then. The people today, we had a gas crisis a little bit ago through the COVID whenever we had a supply crisis. But it was a whole nother thing in the 70s because
it was.
They had the people to point the finger at with the OPEC and all that stuff. And
Yeah, I remember our parents talking about that in the 70s there. And of course, more, people were losing money to cheaper, more fuel-efficient Japanese cars. While that may be significant in the wrestling business, Gotch knew a big Asian heel would infiltrate the working man who thought had been slighted by Japanese Vietnamese. In other words, he would give a huge natural heat with the fans. That's what he's seen in that.
At that time in the country, especially, because growing up at that time in the country, my dad served in Vietnam, and I remember what it was like and the vibe and the feel, and it was kind of a darker time in America in those, right around before the bicentennial and before the disco era and all that stuff in the early 70s, it was a really dark time right after the war. But then especially into the later 70s as the MIA situation was being addressed and the POWs and all that other stuff. So America at that time was not a fan of the Asian community in general. Now, I can't speak for all Asian communities, but I'm just saying, like, and I came from the Midwest, so things may have been different in San Francisco and New York and the bigger metropolitan areas, but in the rural areas, which is mostly where your military people come from, that there was not, it was not good for them at that time. So to have an American, for the wrestling fans, which also incorporates a huge number of that same audience, whenever they've got a good guy and they see a bad guy coming in that's portraying an Asian bad guy at that time, the feelings that they already have, the latent feelings that they already have about what's happened, come out in a good way. You know what I mean? They can vent that through the wrestling. You know what I mean? So they might not always holler and chant the right names, and they might not always be politically correct, but it's better than going and shooting up, you know what I mean, the Asian side of town because you're mad at them. You know, at least they can bend. And McMahon in the Northeast was a genius at that with what he did, with the way he worked with the different ethnicities and played one off the other. But that's where Khan eventually hit it big. But it was Gotch that saw him, and Gotch saw the ability and the marketability, like you say, knowing, like from the article, knowing that it was going to piss people off, and he would be able to easily piss people off because he could back it up. He had the sumo. Just about any Japanese person that you see come out of the wrestling business before the 1990s has had some kind of sumo background growing up, right? In school, it's like football and baseball, like in America, right? You have sumo exposure, and there's some kind of a sumo background. Even all the way to the Samoans, Haku, same thing. He came up through that. So he could handle himself, we'll put it that way. So, like, not only Haku, but we're talking about Khan. Khan saw Khan and recognized, you know what I mean? And told him, like, hey, man, big money in America, you should go over. He got him, put a foot in the door. And in the old days, that's how you got in the game. So Gotch put his foot in the door for Khan, and Khan got into the country and started out in the Southeast, Florida and Georgia, down in that area.
Yeah. Before he hit the United States there, he made a quick stop in Mexico in 1978, and had at least one match with Miles Mascara and feuded with El Canique. He had a feud with there, and then he took off, and, you know, like you said, he went to Florida, Georgia, and Pac's song was already revived in Florida, and Graham saw a chance to let the kid get over and draw instant heat, like we're talking about, by teaming him with Song, who partnered with Jose LaDutch, who partnered with Jose LaDutch, who had left the area at the time.
Joe LaDuke.
All right.
Joe LaDuke. Yeah, he was the Canadian, like a lumberjack type guy.
And as usual, of course, the fans hated them. The pair won the NWA United States Tag Team Championships on March 31st, 1979, after beating the Blonde Bombers. One of the Bombers, Wayne Ferris, would go on later become a honky tonk band, which that's I thought that was interesting right there. There's
been a few different incarnations of the Blonde Bombers. Patterson and Stevens for a while were the Blonde Bombers. And then, Wayne Ferris, and, man, I can't think of his tag team partner's name. It slips my mind. But they were – Jim Cornette also used the Blonde Bomber gimmick in Smoky Mountain. Yeah.
I've seen Smoky Mountain. I can't remember. It's been forever since I've seen
it's hard for me to keep everything in line. Plus, some of the medicines they got me on, it makes my memory not as sharp as what it was anyway. So
yeah.
but yeah, some of those guys, it's cool to see the way that they evolve their different characters through the different territories. I wonder, and then like Wayne Ferris, who knows where he finally got that honky tonk man gimmick and how long he'd been working on it. But that was like that's one for life. Once you get something like that, you don't got to do nothing else. You know what I mean? Forever.
Nope. Found something. He found a gimmick and it worked and he got over and he stuck with it. I mean, yeah, you're exactly right there.
The thing about whenever Killer Khan was working the Southeast there, he was working at Georgia. Andre at that time was hitting all territories. Andre is on a worldwide schedule, right? Is lined out by Vince Sr. at that time. So Andre comes through Atlanta and comes through to work Georgia. Ole's down there booking, right? Yeah. Killer Khan's there at the same time working tag matches. Andre and Killer Khan get booked opposite each other in a random tag match. And for whatever reason, it could be that Andre, this is another one of those suppositional moments, like what I said earlier, where you just got to put the natural order of things together in your brain, and it's always going to lead to the correct thing, right? So,
right.
Andre works Japan all the time. Khan had been working at New Japan Wrestling. You got to know that at some point in time back then, even if they didn't know of each other well, they had to have had exposure of one another, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So then you get to Georgia, he sees Khan again. Khan's working these matches. Vince Sr. is the one that books Andre all over the country, right? He's got Vince Sr.'s ear. Vince Sr. calls the shots. Next thing you know, Killer Khan's in New York. You know what I mean? Like, that's how shit was back then.
Yeah.
Hey, I know this guy. You can count on this guy. You can make money with this guy. You can do something with this guy. I would lay down a bunch of money on a bet that it was one of those questions. It was like, I know this guy down in Georgia, boss, you know what I mean? Talking to Senior, you know, Senior probably clacking the quarters together, working it out. If you say he's good, we'll go with it, Andre. You know what I mean? We'll give him a shot to see if he's good. Next thing you know, Khan's in New York City making money.
Oh, yeah.
With Andre.
Yeah, you can imagine Andre was like, hey, boss. Yeah, exactly. This guy, I work with him, man. We can make something. You know, we did some stuff down here. We could do it here. Yeah. We can make a lot of money. And he was like, all right, you know, word of mouth. There you go, man.
Too. The Asian, the evil Asian, like we talked about earlier with the way New York was played the ethnicity characters well as heels and baby faces. They knew how to do it right and use the city's population to their advantage, because they only really worked that one major city, Philadelphia, some other cities. But in Madison Square Garden, with the amount of population that you got, you can sell it out every night. You know what I mean? So they didn't have to travel all over like some of these other territories did. And man, for Khan to come in and get pushed against Andre, you got to take that into consideration as well. Just that scenario on its own. Andre was a level of celebrity that no other wrestler at that time was a level of celebrity. Not even the NWA champion. They didn't have the celebrity that Andre had. To work against Andre or to work with Andre was to be vaulted and raised up so many notches. Andre don't pay for meals when he goes in restaurants in those days. No way. Andre's not going to pick up big bar tabs when he goes to the bar in those days. No way. Because if Andre's in your bar, guess what? More people are coming in your bar. If Andre's seen in your place of business, guess what? More people are coming in your place of business. Whether you set it up that way or not, whether Andre agrees to go to places or not, if you're involved with Andre, automatically you got some of that too.
Exactly.
It's the way the business is done.
Yeah, Andre was an attraction. People came out to see him. He was an attraction. It's like a 400 something pound. What was he, about 6'10", 6'11", or something? I mean,
scraping that 7 foot mark easily. That's why he never held the belt. He never held a title because he didn't need to.
He didn't need to. Well, except that one time when he held it for like 25 minutes, and he sold it to Jimmy.
just like I heard Cornette say it in a podcast, and all credit to Cornette. If he did win the title, who's going to beat him?
Exactly. You know, who is going to beat him?
Believably, who's going to beat him?
Yeah, exactly. But you know, when Ted DiBiase gave him that money, he was like, you know what? I can buy a lot of bottle of wine with this.
Yeah, man. Like, that was all great storytelling because it goes all back to the everybody's got a price thing, even Andre. You know what I mean? So it strengthens Ted DiBiase. Then those guys in that era were firing on 20 cylinders. That shit was so great. But
It was.
Killer Khan, the thing about Khan was they were running, Khan and Andre were running, now they're against each other in matches all up and down the WW, not only WWE, WWF, get all the W's in there, the WWF territory, but Vince Sr. is now able to book these matches out in the other territories and have Khan chase Andre. You know what I mean? Or whatever, however you want to say it. And then the accident happens, right? So I don't want to get too far ahead of where you're at or where you want to be. But whenever they're doing their run of matches, Andre at either a hotel or his residence, I doubt it's his residence. I'm sure it's a hotel because how often would he have ever been home to hang out? Slipped in the bathtub and broke his ankle. Fractured his ankle in real life. And now you got Senior with his biggest drawn guy that's going to be on the shelf for X amount of time till he gets healed. And it's Andre, so he's got a bone thing going on anyway with the acromegaly, so who knows how that's going to heal anyway. So these guys, the genius again that they were, worked the angle for Killer Khan to break Andre's ankle in the ring by jumping off the rope. Killer Khan, for those that haven't watched, should watch. He had this scream. He would do this, not like loud, but this blood curdling, when he would do moves and jump off the top rope and kicks and shit that would just emphasize its brutality so much more, even though it wasn't adding anything to what he was doing to hurt the guy. It just sounded really good. And he off the rope and come down and broke Andre's ankle. I can only imagine getting him out of the building that night. Like, I can only imagine that what he had to do out of the building safely that night. But then Killer Khan broke his ankle. Now he's got that reputation, just like very akin to Greg the Hammer Valentine when he broke Wahoo McDaniel's ankle. He had the shirts evens. I broke Wahoo's ankle and whatever back in the day. But so now Killer Khan's got this reputation. This guy put Andre on the shelf. If he put Andre on the shelf, you know what I mean? This must be a bad dude. So now he's drawn as a top heel. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Andre's shooting, before there was videos and vignettes, there was interviews. And they would do like the interview. You know what I mean? Andre would come out to one of the tapings and do an interview at the ringside or whatever with his cast and shit. And they were interviewing Andre, and he's talking about how he's going to get better, and how he's going to get back Killer Khan, how he's going to get even with Killer Khan. All this shit. They're building the heat, building the fucking pressure of the situation until finally Andre's back. And he's coming for Killer Khan. And those guys sold out and made money on the chase with Andre chasing Khan up and down the East Coast to the major cities all down through there that Vince could book in. Those guys made so much friggin' money. I can't in those terms. And that was like that was the reason it was the feud of 1981, because of Andre getting revenge on Killer Khan after he had broken his ankle early in the year. You know what I mean? Earlier in 1980. So it was white heat again and again, a guy that was in the right place at the right time. He may not have been a transition for a champion, but he was a transition for an attraction, like you say. So Khan was used to facilitate that. You know what I mean? So chess pieces being moved around the board by geniuses beyond our imagination, you know?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, like like this right here, like you see this match going on right now. This is a stretcher match, and in Philadelphia with Andre the Giant versus Killer Khan.
That was the big blow up. That was the final blow off match.
Yeah, this right here, that you can see Andre's foot in the thing in the rope, because Vince McMahon Jr. mentioned is like he's getting his foot in the ropes, just like he broke Khan's. He mentioned he breaking his ankle. So look at that, just stretcher. You imagine someone coming at you with a stretcher the size of Andre. Oh my God!
To say, just the idea that Andre is going to be booked in a stretcher match. You know he's not going to lose because you're going to have a forklift connected to the stretcher to roll his ass out.
Oh, yeah.
So going into that, you know, Andre's going to win that match. But like, yes, the stuff back then, the Mongolian stretcher match. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, like they would play that stuff up just to sound just as fatal and horrible as they could. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Up until Vince got full control and into the Raw era, did you actually see these matches where people could legitimately be killed? You know? And I'm not making fun of anyone definitely not making fun of the death of Owen Hart by any means. I'm saying, like, if you go back and look at in 1999, Al Snow and the Big Boss Man were feuding, and they had a match with a steel cage with the Hell in the Cell lowered on top of the steel cage, and then Rottweilers running around the ring on top of that. You know what I mean? It's like, how much more insane can you get? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But back in those days, when you saw a match like that, it was a big deal. You know?
It looks like my stream on YouTube got suspended for showing that footage right there of that stretcher match.
Wow.
Yeah.
And social media today is a double-edged sword.
Look at it. Stream unavailable. Oh my God. It got suspended. I bet it's
not streaming on YouTube. Did you get shut down?
Yeah. YouTube shut me down.
Well, it's YouTube's loss. Here's
my goodness.
for YouTube from Steve Austin.
Yeah, because I showed footage. So it's not available. So I'll probably
WWE's hardcore on that copyright shit. You got to be careful, man. Nowadays they'll get you.
Well, you know what, Jim? That will be strike number 2 in the last 7 years. Strike number 2.
We won't talk about my history being banned from Facebook in different places.
I can't believe it. Yeah, there it is. I just got the email. Hi, Everett Lee. Due to copyright match, your stream was interrupted. Video titled Everett Lee Show, blah, blah. Your stream is interrupted when copyright content is detected. After copyright material is no longer being streamed, streams are automatically re-enabled. So
that's a computer somewhere whirling an algorithm, watching what we're doing. Everything is monitored nowadays. Everything is monitored.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So it looks like I won't be able to stream live anymore on YouTube.
At least not for a little while.
Yeah, not for a little while. So anyone who was watching YouTube, I'm sorry if you jumped over. I can't believe that, man. I can't believe it. I'm showing just a little bit of this. Okay.
I don't want to talk about getting banned too much. I'm gonna knock on my wooden desk before something happens to me.
Actually, it's back. It's back on. The live stream is back on YouTube now. Yeah. Oh, that's crazy. But
that's like the punishment that the millionaire rich kids get when they do something wrong.
I know.
You know, don't do it again.
Yeah.
Well, maybe they won't see me giving them the bird.
Yeah. Who cares?
They're number one.
But, yeah, Killer Khan, man, he's one of those interesting heels, man, who had a great feud with Andre the Giant, and I loved it. He pretty much was placed in rotation with with the battling with Bob Backlund. He had matches against him. He had pretty good matches with a lot of the talent that was in WWF.
After that Andre feud, that raised his money level and raised his cachet in America. And he went around and hit the circuit again, did some territorial work, went around. He was in Mid-South for a little while, went down through that way. He was in Mississippi and had I think it was the Mississippi heavyweight title, if I'm not mistaken, and beat Mr. Olympia, beat him for that title. I only mention that because I'm buddies with Jerry Stubbs. Hope you're feeling better, Jerry. Yeah, the Mr. Olympia, he's a good dude, man. He had some funny things to say about Khan. He said he was the nicest guy outside the ring, and like whenever you got in the ring, it was just like what you hear normally about the really good heels. You know what I mean? It was like a flip of the switch, and all of a sudden he's Killer Khan. He said he didn't have much to say because of the English barrier, but yeah, like those guys, those guys of that era, whenever they would go to Japan and work, you got the Americans, the Dusty Rhodes, Harley Race, Jerry Stubbs, Mr. Olympia, those guys that were going over to work in Japan anyway. Now they know Killer Khan over there. Khan's got a restaurant over there. He's, they place to hang out, someplace safe to go chill. You know what I mean? So it was just a really good deal all the way around. And Khan worked it into the mid 80s, and he actually had a short shot at Hogan. But whenever Vince Jr. was running heels against Hogan in those mid 80s a lot, you would see like it would only be like a month. He would go get somebody for like the span of about a month, and then that heel would rotate down and fight lower card guys, and the next big heel would be brought in for Hogan and run about a month. Right. If you're like when Boss Man came in, him and Hogan had magic, and they ran almost a year. You know what I mean? Fighting each other back and forth. But normally it was about a month, and Killer Khan got about that much time, and then he ended up going back to Japan and do his own thing.
Yeah. Yeah, he even went on to Texas and did stuff with the Freebirds and Von Erichs. I thought that was pretty neat right there. Reading about that right there.
I can only imagine. Can you imagine that match? The Freebirds and Killer Khan versus the Von Erichs and somebody else, fucking Chris Adams or somebody. I couldn't imagine the Freebirds and Killer Khan together. I would, man, especially back in those days. The Freebirds were a force to be reckoned with, and Killer Khan, he was just sitting on the edge of the ring waiting to be tagged so he could beat the hell out of somebody. That was all he was like a machine. He only knew beat your ass. You know what I mean? Tag me and I'll beat your ass. That's all he knew. Like there wasn't no fancy polishing or nothing, no nuances to Killer Khan. He just come in, he'd kick you in the gut, chop the shit out of you, come off the top rope, missed you in the face, you're done. Another the Asian mist. All of the great Asian wrestlers always had the mist in their little arsenal.
Great Muda.
Yeah, all the great Asian wrestlers, Muda, Tajiri, Killer Khan, Great Kabuki, all those guys spray you, hit you with the mist. Muda though, early Muda was really good. When he had the white and black paint, early Muda was really good. But Killer Khan was another one of those wrestlers that transcended pop culture, because Killer Khan actually made it onto one of the very first wrestling video games. It's not, you don't see it as Killer Khan, his actual name. The name of the character is Ken Corn Karn, but that is Killer Khan. Every move Killer Khan did, that guy done. Whenever I was a kid, the square gray Nintendo was just hitting the scene as I was becoming an early teenager before I started driving. Once I started driving, I started partying. I was out and gone. It was all over. I don't know anything about any shit that happened after that, really, for a little while. But right before that happened,
looking at that there, I was like, "Wow, I didn't know that."
Pro Wrestling or something like that. Nintendo Pro Wrestling.
Pro Wrestling. I loved that game as a kid, man. So that was Killer Khan. Wow, that's pretty damn.
No, they never came out outright and said it. Killer Khan, Ken Corn Karn, Hulk Hogan was King Slender, Fighter Hayabusa was Inoki. Although
Yes.
I always thought Fighter Hayabusa looked like Iron Mike Sharp.
And there was Starman and the Giant Panther and the Amazon.
Yeah, the Amazon was what I always used. I like the Amazon because I'm a heel.
Yeah.
And the Amazon had 2 offensive moves. The sumbitch would grab you in a headlock and take a wrench and gouge you in the head with the wrench. His other offensive move was to grab you by the ears and bite your head.
Yeah. Well, on a bite and outlaw choke.
Yeah. So yeah, that was I was a heel for life. Let me just say that. I should have the brand. I was a heel at 5 years old and didn't know what a heel was, doing shit I should have been doing. But yes, I was the Amazon guy, and then Giant Panther was a bad guy. But I always went to the Amazon and King Corn Karn, man. King Corn Karn had that chop. Wow, man, that motherfucker choppy, and yeah.
Yeah.
That game, that was a good game, man.
Yeah, it was.
The square box Nintendo was a big deal whenever I was 13 years old. Yeah.
Oh yeah, pro wrestling. I remember when that came out. A friend of mine had that game, and it was just so great. Pro wrestling there with the fighters and stuff they had on the game. But
fast forward,
yeah,
fast forward to when I'm 22. One of the last video games that I owned was for the Nintendo 64. Also a wrestling game, and you could reach into the crowd and grab steel chairs and grab the ring bell and all kinds of shit. Man, I grabbed that ring bell and it would sound like the ice cream truck was coming down the fucking street. I was bashing the hell out of everybody, man.
Oh damn! What was that? Was that WCW Mayhem or was it WWF No Mercy?
I think it may have been No Mercy.
No Mercy, yeah.
The WCW had really good video games at that time. But the one game that I distinctly remember, you could fight and go down the aisle and go into the back and fight. And oh man, there was no match in the ring. I was watching ECW at that time. Everything that I had to put it as a no DQ match because I didn't stay in the ring.
I loved it. I loved the old wrestling games. My favorite one was in 99 when they came out with WWF Attitude WWF Warzone. That was cool. You create your own wrestler. Every year
there was a different game, man. Every year there was a different game. There were so many fun ones where you could create your own wrestler. That was great. Because I would create these guys. It looked like the humongous almost. They'd be walking out all big, crazy looking, fucking the hockey mask and all that shit. Yeah, they just go down and just stomper style, beat the hell out of everything that moved. There was no finesse. It was a beat.
That was fun. That was fun. Those were the great days. I do want to throw this out here. You've been bringing back some good memories because apparently on social media, you've been going back watching, I guess you've been watching Raw from 96 to, where are you at right now?
March of 2000.
March of 2000? Wow.
Yeah,
that's
the
awesome.
Royal Rumble, or the WrestleMania 2000 is just about to happen.
My favorite moment from Raw would have to be my 2 favorite moments from Raw would have to be the Zamboni when Steve Austin comes out with Zamboni. Don't let him in here. Remember that? Do not. He pulls the light down and he drags it out and he hits
the ring. All that shit. Yeah, taking it with him. Yeah.
As soon as he hits the ring, he moves the ring a couple inches. As soon as Steve Austin gets up, and all of a sudden he goes like this and jumps off and starts hitting Vince. Vince is sitting there gyrating, selling it.
Vince was so great.
And what I liked about it was he jumped all over Undertaker Kane. He's like, "Where were you? Where were you? Here's this man attacking me and stuff." He said, "Now I'm handicapped." And Undertaker said, he said, or something along the handicap. And Undertaker looked at him and he said, "You better watch it or you're going to be handicapped." And he goes, and like this. And then the Undertaker turned around and catches him.
Yeah, I see him doing it.
Break his foot, which leads into one of my all-time favorite moments on Raw was the incident in the hospital with Stone Cold, where he starts clear and he shocks him. He starts hitting him in the leg, and then he takes the bedpan. Pow!
You could take the video of that completely away and just loop the audio of that bedpan clonking him in the fucking head, and I would mark for that all day. It was just clonk, man, and it's not Vince takes it. It's not no held back shot. It's a decent shot, and then and then he hits him with the big enema. Let's see how full of crap you really are. Hits him with the big enema. What I got really, really tired of the current product, and I was watching Mid-South. I'd watched all the Mid-South that the network had to offer, and I'm pretty active on my social media. So I was like, I was like, and we're going to go back to the genesis of when Raw and the WWF at that time really turned the corner. So I started watching it from the Monday Night Raw right after the King of the Ring that Stone Cold beat Jake the Snake. The very first Raw that you saw 316 signs.
Yes.
Right? So I started with that one and it worked my way forwards. I'm not like I'm sitting there watching them 8 hours a day like a junkie. It's like, 1998. Let's get it. It's not like that. You know what I mean? But like, if I'm working or whatever, I've got my television right above my workstation now because of the chair, so I don't have to do a lot of turning around. When I'm working, researching, doing whatever on the computer, it's right there. I can lean back and watch it, and it's like background a little bit, but I'm hearing it happen all the time. They hit a really good stride in the late 90s. 99 was a really good year.
Yes.
If you just want to go back and watch 1 year of the Attitude Era and get a really nice taste, because the Attitude Era, people, we're getting off on a tangent, it kind of overlaps. You've got the Bret Hart generation and those guys, and then you got after the Stone Cold King of the Ring win and those guys that come along. And for a little while, they overlap each other, and you get a little bit of the best of both worlds. 99 is whenever they're really starting to shed their skin and come out and do wild and crazy shit. And they got the Divas and the Kings hollering about the puppies, and it's just a wonderful, wonderful time in wrestling history. So I would recommend that. If you got to pick 1 year out of the hat, watch anything from 1999, and you're almost guaranteed to be entertained.
Yeah, I just graduated high school, and I love the fact that I can actually stay up late, and I didn't have to worry.
1999.
Yeah, I graduated in 98.
Holy shit.
I graduated in 98, 99. I love that year because I can actually stay up late. I did have to work, but if I did have to work, it would sometimes be in the evening or afternoon. I'd work that, but I was able to watch wrestling. Or if I had to work that night, I'd tape it. I would tape Monday Night Raw, and my cousin would tape WCW, and I'd go back and forth, watch them. It's like, hey, did you tape last night? Yeah. All right. I'm coming over. I want to get the tape. I'd bring it home and sit there, or I'd go over there and watch it with them. And I'd go back and forth on the Monday Night Wars and stuff there.
Every Monday night I would make the choice. Like I had a couple friends I always watch with, and we would make the choice. This week, what are we going to watch live this week? We'd watch one live and tape the other one. You know what I mean? And then watch it after it was over. So we'd have the whole, good times. Good times.
Good times.
Before we close up on Killer Khan, I want to say one more thing about after his retirement and after he got older and started doing less in the ring, because he had a very short wrestling career in America, but overall in general, he would do spot shows and whatnot. It's not like he survived on that. He had businesses and different things. And later in his career, he was involved in a hit and run accident. He was on his way to his restaurant and hit a girl on a bicycle. And kept going, right? And got to his restaurant. And I'm not trying to diminish what he did, because hit and run, that's a bad thing. He should have stopped. He should have helped that girl. He should have did all that. But the heel in my heart, when I read his response, I laughed so hard. He said the response that he gave to the police was, "Yeah, I knew I ran over the girl, but I had to get to the restaurant to take care of something there." Like, it was like, "Yeah, I knew I hit her, but I had shit to do."
Wow.
And like, he got in.
That was such a heel move.
He had to pay medical bills and shit like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's like a Hulk Hogan in that country, but not we don't hear about it as much because we're not in their realm. You know what I mean? We're not in their zone of social media or any of that shit in their world. But he just clips this girl, hits her on a bicycle, like goes on, just like boom, but what the hell was that? Goes on, keeps on to the restaurant, gets notified about it from the police. Hey, you were involved in a hit and run. It's like, oh yeah, I know I hit that girl, but I had to get down here and take care of some shit. You know, like I laughed so hard when I read the response. He's still alive. Evidently, you can still walk into the restaurant and see him on a daily basis. He's in there. You know what I mean? If I would love to, man, I would mark out so hard if I could go over there. Taking a trip to Japan is on the bucket list of things to do before I die, but I don't know if I'm gonna make it. I'm 50, and my passport status is iffy. If I leave the country, they might not want me back.
You could do it, man. You can do it. You go over there, see Khan, and come back.
Oh,
you can do it. You can do it.
See Killer Khan. Go to a wrestling show in the Tokyo Dome, and to see Sumo live in Kurikan Hall. Bucket list items, man, for Japan.
You can do it. You can do it. You're going to do it before you leave this world, Jim. I know it. I know it. I know it, Jim Phillips.
I got to get my legs back under me by the end of the year. Little baby steps. Right now, I'd have it be a long roll over there. Be a long goddamn roll over there. You know what I mean?
You can do it. You can do it. You can do it, man. I believe in you. I believe in you, and I will pray for you. I will.
The heel in me.
I've been doing it.
The heel in me would like to see someone else push me down the Great Wall and just let it go and see what happens. That's me inflicting harm on myself. But the heel in me thinks that would be funny.
I'm sorry, I had to laugh as soon as you said
yeah,
I know.
Through this whole situation, I've been trying to make light of things so I can laugh, so I don't get about, you know what I mean? Because otherwise, it just
you got to keep a good spirit. That's what I enjoy. You're in good spirits with the situation you're in and stuff. But I mean, what great stories if something happens to you, what great stories like the one we just discussed with Killer Khan,
right?
You can see on Pro Wrestling Stories, man. You know, Simon.
I've got a little bit of immortality through my work. A little bit of immortality through my work. I'm no celebrity, but the stories and the stuff that we do will always be there. You know what I mean? Recently, Pro Wrestling Stories has become affiliated with MSN. So now there's quite a few of us that are MSN journalists now. We can put that on our resume. You know what I mean?
Nice.
So yes, it is. It's really nice. The guy, I always pop him, and he says, "Oh, you don't got to mention me, but I'm going to do it. I do it every time." JP Zarka, the guy that owns Pro Wrestling Stories, not only is he a good friend, he's a good human being. And he's not out just trying to make a buck and grind whatever he can out. He puts his heart and soul into that website. He's on it every day doing something. And, yeah, I love him. He's my brother. He's a good friend. He helped organize a GoFundMe for me during this time, and it raised all kinds of money that I used for medical supplies and rent when I wasn't able to work and all this stuff. I wasn't able to physically work, but during that time I put out 3 stories while I was in the hospital. You know what I mean? So I continued the writing, but yeah, such a great family of people at Pro Wrestling Stories. I'm so proud to be affiliated with them.
That's amazing. If it looks like I'm freaking out, this morning I had an 8-legged friend over here by my computer, and I tried to catch him, and he was too quick. and I'm seeing some movement, and I'm like, if you see me jump up hollering, "Oh my ass" or something, it's yeah, he's taking a bite out of my ass. And
you'll be doing the Spanish flamenco dance on the goddamn floor trying to stomp the spider. Is this friend or foe? Is this an escaped friend or a random crawl around?
An uninvited guest decided to come in. I came in when I was getting up this morning for work. He was like right here on the chair, like over on my other chair, just right there. And I told my wife, I said, "Don't freak out." She's like, "What?" I said, "Don't freak out." I was like, "What?" And I'm like, right there. And she's like, "Ah!" It's like, "Don't freak out." And then all of a sudden I was like, "Here," I grabbed the fly swatter. I was like, "All right, here's what I'm going to do." Okay. Nothing goes as planned. Of course, I'm going to flip them off the chair. As soon as you flip them off, you stomp them. Why do I got to stomp them? No, you got the shoes on. I don't got shoes. Okay. All right. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Boom, boom, gone. It's like, son of a gun, man. Yeah. And then all of a sudden I came home from work and I'm just over here moving some stuff around. I'm like, "Where you at?" And I look over and I see, I'm like, I'm gonna freak out. I don't like spiders.
Let you get going so you can go on the hunt.
Yes.
I'll say one last thing and then talk a little bit about pro wrestling stories some more, and then I'll get going. We've been going for a while now.
Yes, been great.
Oh man, I always enjoy talking to you, Everett. Always in southeastern Colorado, down by Pueblo, every year down there in the desert part of Colorado, tarantula migration. You would not want to be there. The whole friggin' town's moving. Yeah. It's males looking for females. Yeah, but it's like a yearly thing. Yeah, fuck the Watermelon Festival. Come down and see the town get covered over by spiders.
No. They keep that. They keep that, man. I'm gonna sleep now. Thanks a lot.
I'll pass on that one. No, you can go hunt this guy down with a shoe. I've seen a black widow or two here and there, but most of the time, I can't complain about Colorado. Now, if you get out by the woods, you got big animals that'll kill you and eat you. But as long as you stay around the house, you're pretty safe. Every now and then you'll see on the news of the random cougar caught on night camera, walking down the alley of some street in Denver. You know what I mean? So they're out there, and you go to walk on the trails and shit by the mountains and you see the signs, beware bears, mountain lions. You know what I'm saying? So there's shit out there that wants to grab you and eat you. But you just got to be aware of your surroundings, rattlesnakes, all that good shit. We got them. Yeah. So, but I'm just going to take a real quick moment to plug the pro wrestling stories again. If you wanted to learn anything about wrestling history, read articles about interviews with wrestlers, different things like that, we've got something for you. So go check us out and we will be there. You can also find me on Facebook at Jim Phillips, the Rocky Mountain Hi-Hat. You can find me on there. Also on YouTube, an old show that I used to do called Urban Inc. We did urban exploration in haunted houses. I'm telling you, I've done all kinds of wild shit. And then I've got a YouTube page as well under my name. So you can go look all that stuff up. And I really want to say thank you for allowing me this time and this forum to talk and everything. Next time I see you, I'll do a little shuffle. It won't be a wheelchair shuffle. Hopefully it'll be a two-legged shuffle. But yeah, man, we're always moving forwards and trying to make the progress. And thank you so much for your time. And I appreciate you, my brother. And I will holler at you later.
All right. I will see you later, man. And I do want to thank everyone for tuning in tonight on this episode of the Everett Lee Show live right here on Facebook, Everett Lee Show, and over on Twitter at the Everett_Lee, and on YouTube, the Everett Lee, or Everett Lee on YouTube. And that is it for this episode, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in. Give a like, a follow, and share this episode on the media platforms. And I am signing off. Everyone have a great night. We'll see you next time for another new episode of the Everett Lee Show. Peace.
Follow The Everett Lee Show on the following social media platforms: Facebook, The Everett Lee Show; Twitter, @The Everett _Lee; Instagram, Everett Lee. Subscribe, follow, The Everett Lee Show, on the following platforms: Anchor.fm/Everett Lee Show, YouTube, Everett Lee, and Johners Podcast Network, WrestlingWithJohners.com.